I'm going to be getting into some of this more or less areas where young people and so forth need to take notice of. Here in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 1 says, "Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them." Right now is the time for you to make your decisions. Because if you don't make the decisions to manage your life right where you are right now, whether you're below a teenager or whether you are a teenager or whether you're a middle-aged person or whether you are an elderly individual, you have to do your changing now if there's changing required. If you don't manage your life as a young person, you will suffer the consequences in the future. You say, well, I'm still young, and it really doesn't matter. It matters a whole lot. It really does matter. Because a young person who can manage their life, when they run into problems, temptations, trials, or anything else, their life is so managed that they can handle the situation. They don't have to decide whether to do wrong or not. The decision is already made. It's already a managed situation. They have already managed their life to take care of that. If you don't manage your life as a middle-aged individual, you'll face disaster when you get old. Because it's very important that you need control of yourself at all times. And we're talking about discipline management. Discipline management. Managing yourself, discipline yourself. Discipline isn't giving yourself a spanking necessarily. It means you got yourself under control. You have yourself under control. If you don't manage your time, you will be robbed of valuable time, because there are so many things can rob you of valuable time. So many things can. You have to manage that time. Everybody, we said already, everybody's got 24 hours in a day, but not everybody uses the same amount of time. Some people waste their time on things that are actually dangerous to them, such as parked in front of a television and spending time and not getting to bed. Then they get up late in the morning or have to try to get to work in time, and they're draggy, and because they sit up half a night listening to television or something, watching this stuff. And most of that is not edifying anyway. If you don't manage your father-motherhood and your marriage, it could cause a permanent problem for you in the future. That's why you have to discipline yourself. If you don't manage your whole life in every area, you could have an eternal loss. That's the reason that you have to make sure you're managing, because you're headed for eternity. What you do is going to matter. If you don't discipline yourself, the Lord will have to discipline you, and that's a serious matter. For we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged, but when we're judged, we're chastened of the Lord. If you're not going to judge yourself right, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, 31, if you don't do that management, somebody's going to help you. Most people cannot manage themselves. Now, here's the thing that's fresh off the press. The Lord said to me this morning, there's things that go on in all of your churches that need to have a stop put to them, and that's habits. Habits are affecting people. I want everybody to listen to me. This is you, not somebody else now. You don't pay attention to your neighbor. This is you. You have a habit. You're either cracking your fingers, or you're wiggling your foot, or you're balancing the baby on your knee or something all the time. And nobody's going to say anything. But the Holy Spirit notices that people recognize that, and all of a sudden, the Spirit just kind of moves away, because it is distracting people. You wouldn't think about how serious it is for you to sleep in church. You're actually hindering the Spirit from operating in somebody else's life. There's people who you already know. They're going to do certain things in church. That's what they're going to do. I mean, you already know it. You can expect it. All they say, well, the reason I do that is to calm the baby. You know, the Lord said to me that most people who are balancing their baby on the knee, the baby don't even like it. The baby has to take it, but the baby don't want it. The baby wants to sit calm. And he said all it is a reaction of nerve problems. It's not you swinging your baby back and forth like this all the time. Has nothing to do with the baby's need. Now, there's the time rocking the baby. I'm not talking about that. He's talking about a habit. Now, here's something else he said to me. A habit will lead into an addiction. And you get so addicted to those habits that you expect everybody else to surrender to you. And just stop for a moment and just think. What do you do in church or in home or wherever it is that you have a habit? You just have a terrible habit. You may not think about it being a habit, but it's affecting somebody. He said all our churches have somebody in it that is affecting to the negative people. All of them do. They have a habit. I know one church that somebody sits on the front and just cracks your finger the whole time I'm speaking. Bang, bang, crack, crack, crack. It really affects me. It affects me terrible. Well, they say, well, that's my business. Not necessarily. If it affects somebody else, it isn't your business. See, what you have to do is learn to discipline yourself. Wait a little. Is this affecting somebody to the negative? A well-disciplined person is in control of his mind, will, and emotions. Your emotions have to be brought under discipline. It has to be managed. If you don't manage your mind, will, and emotions, they'll manage you. When you have an emotional experience, especially in the form of a habit, it's an addiction. You're used to doing it, and you're going to do it without even thinking. And you're going to have to get to the place where you're going to decide, is this the right thing for me to do? I'm going to have to stop doing that. He that controls his life, and if you just control your life in general, you're not going to get along too good. It has to be a decision made. Other people are affected by what I do. Other people are affected by the way I act. We can learn. The thing of it is, a person who isn't disciplined is an obnoxious individual in a lot of cases. They're obnoxious. They don't know they are, and nobody has the nerves to tell them they are, but they're just obnoxious. They're just a habit that's just always there. They're not disciplined. I've seen people who just seem like they just can't discipline themselves. They don't know what they're doing. And what I'd like to suggest today is, pardon me for using the word suggest, what I would like to say today is we check those habits, whether it's at home, abroad, or wherever it may be. You have to learn somebody else is in this place. And all you churches out there, listen to me. Somebody's there. Somebody don't like what you're doing. They're not going to say anything, but if I mention a certain habit somebody has, everybody knows who I'm talking about. But nobody's got the nerves to say much, because it may offend them. And if you get offended, you really need this message. Brother Kevin said, repent. Now, the next one is child training, which we have already had that. It just happened to be twice in your book. Rule that child before it rules you. Let me mention something as we pass by there. Last evening, we were at a restaurant, and they have a place out there to sit. And there's a young little boy that started just running around, and I'm trying to sit over to the other place, and he's running around. And his daddy said, Billy, sit down. Stop that running. And Billy goes like this. And I thought, good. You know, I mean, he stopped running right away. You know what he did? He looked right at his daddy like this. Took off running. He'd make another round, look at his daddy. And then he'd grin at his daddy. And after a while, he had complete control of that place. So the dad just let him go. He already lost the battle, and the boy knew it. Now, after a while, the dad can't find the boy. I know where the boy went. He went outside. And now the daddy's scared. He can't find his boy. I'm not even going to tell him where his boy went. He went out and looked in the restaurant to see if the boy was there. And he looked here and there. He couldn't find the boy. And I wasn't going to tell him where his boy was at. Finally found him and brought him in. You know what the boy did? Grinned at his daddy, started running around. Completely out of control. Folks, that is mockery. That child training. Now you can be as bad this way. Get yourself just angry and just beat that. Duh. You know what? If you're not in control, your children are not going to be in control. If you're not disciplined, you can't discipline your child. It's going to cause a reaction. That's why we have to know that if I'm going to discipline you, I have to be disciplined. Now, let's talk about homeschool management. Some people in our circles have homeschool. And are your children learning according to the laws of the state or the country you're in? See, are they or the county that you're living in, or the country or the county or the state or the providence or whatever it may be? Are you just doing this just to do it? You know it matters. Is your child being educated according to the state laws? And do they spend proper time in their studies? As well as you lenient with them? Do you just kind of give them a good grade because they're kind of not doing their job? What is your child or children doing during class time? What's going on with your children? You put them in a room and say, all right, study this. And what are they doing? You know, if you're in school, you have to meet certain qualifications. But homeschooling often, if it's not managed, is going to get out of hand. Children want to go get a drink, and they want to do this, and they want to do that, and they run to the restroom, and they go here, and they go there. And they know that they can get away with it. But a well-managed school program in the home is that this is study hour, and this is what you're going to do. In case of dire emergency, there can be some lenience, but generally speaking, this is the way we're going to do it. You don't get a drink in between this time and this. The only place you can get away with that, I couldn't have went to a fountain and got a drink anytime I wanted to at school, but you can at church. Because God is in charge. No, you can at church. You can get up and go to the bathroom anytime you want to because you're under no law, and we're so lawless that nobody has to wait until the time it's over. We just go. I want a drink, I can go right back legally, go back there and get me a drink. You know why? Because we've gotten the habit now that God doesn't mean anything. Now listen to me. You just get up and go anywhere you want to go in a church service. You can't do that at school. But we've got in a habit of just doing whatever we want to do. Folks, Brother Kevin said you can take this lessons and start a church with them. I think we should. I mean, after all, what right do you have to go get a drink while God is speaking? Well, that's not God speaking, it's just the preacher. What right do you have to sleep in school? How many of y'all slept in school? The teacher never said a word. And you say, well, I'm taking this XYZ medication. XYZ medication is not allowed in church. We're in church. Now we're talking about homeschool. You'll have a homeschool just like you have at church. If you don't have it under control, your children get up and go get a drink. The other one goes to the restroom, and this one goes get this, and the other one go do this, and the other, and you'll have a runaway. When that child learns discipline and management, it learns that now the class is in session. You may even have to ring a bell or something. You don't move from that job, and you don't talk in school. Sister Nancy was a school teacher. Did your pupils have a chance to talk to each other during school? Why not? It wouldn't work, would it? Bernita was a school teacher. How many of your children could just talk anytime they wanted to? Just get up and go when they wanted to. You know why? Because the church is not into control anymore. We cannot control people anymore, so now our homeschools are not in control either. Churches do not have discipline. They do not have control. Everybody just comes and goes. I was preaching at a church. Some of y'all was there, which is not too far away. And I counted as many as 7 people going in and out the door while I was preaching all the time. They go back and get a drink. Another go back and get a handful of potato chips or something. Another get a drink of something else. Somebody gets a bottle of pop. You know, you don't do that at school. But we do it at church. But you know, you get in a habit and you will have to go to the restroom. I can't hardly imagine this, but that was a preacher, I heard him say it. He said, there's nobody getting up in this church going out to the restroom under any circumstances. If your bladder bursts, we'll pray for you after the service. See, what he's doing is teaching discipline, managing your life. You can come in here and you can manage your children and you can head right back there where them restrooms is at and go to the restroom. And you can do the same thing in your schooling. All right, everybody will go to the restroom right now. School starts in 5 minutes. Everybody go to the restroom. Well, I don't have to go. Well, you're not going while we're having school. Now, on this homeschooling, how do you get a slow learner to cooperate? And especially if you get discouraged. You know, a lot of times a slow learner is a slow learner because he's not disciplined. Now listen carefully. He's not a disciplined person. He's not managed. You can train some of those slow learners to learn fast. They're not interested. And if your mind is not working exactly right, your mind won't quite do it. But you have to get that child to understand that what he or she is learning is a very valuable thing. They must know it. If I was to ask this younger generation, how much is a peck? Well, I don't know if they could tell me. How much is a bushel? But you see, we changed now to meters. It's hard for me to get on to that thing. But the heart of the wise teaches his mouth and addeth learning to his lips in Proverbs 16:23. And what you really do, if you're going to have a homeschool program going, there are several things you need to know. Is what your child is learning, is it tainted with some kind of religious theology that is not scriptural? You can find that any books, whether they come from wherever, you can find a denominational taint in them. And your children need to be told, all right, now you can't write your own books probably. I remember a number of years ago, a fellow said, I'm not having any more Sunday school literature. Everything is out of control in Sunday school literature. So he said they were having back in them days Sunday school. And he said, we're going to study out of the Bible. I know it'll be okay if I study out of the Bible. Now, let's go to the public school. The public school management, what influence does the public school have on your family? You know what the public school will generally do is make a carnal person out of you. They're not spiritually minded. Now, when I went to school, which has been a while ago, but we started our class with prayer. Not only that, but we would have once a week, we had chapel. Everybody goes to chapel. And we sing songs. And we would learn hymns. And we'd learn songs. Our teacher would pray out loud. And nowadays, it's just exactly opposite. Now they're trying to put some kind of religion on you that's totally foreign to God's kingdom. And yet we want to send our children to that dangerous place for several reasons. First of all, homeschooling is a big deal. You send them to a private school, and you still may have the same old garbage. When I went to school, the teacher said to us, now look, according to this school book, I am responsible to teach you evolution. But I'm assigning all of your children, this is not whether you want to, you must do what I tell you to do. I'm going to grade you on it. I want you to read so much in Genesis. Give us the words, Genesis. And I want you to come back tomorrow and tell me what you found out about the Bible. And she was one of those wrinkly teachers that meant business. I know one thing I learned is you better spell atmosphere. That teacher said, if anybody misses that word one more time, you're going to have to write it 1,000 times or something like this. Atmosphere. And I wasn't about to have to do that. So one of the neighbor girls spelled it on her paper, A-T-M-O-S-H-E-R-E. Well, I'm telling you, we all knew about it. But I know how to spell atmosphere. Because somebody managed to make sure we learn. When I say Pop Holland, Brother Dave and Sister Pat both know who Pop Holland is. Believe it or not, we was the same teacher I had. But they're younger than I am. That fellow was on the scene for a long time. But I tell you, when Pop Holland came up, usually his neckties on kind of sideways like this. But I'm telling you what, when he got done teaching you, I had a little problem with the class because I was out. He come sit right down the side of me. And he said, now here's the way this works. While the rest of them doing their work, he's there showing me how to catch up. See, management. You're going to have to manage your children that's been in that public school mindset. You're going to have to manage them, or they're going to believe there is no God and that we come from monkeys. What kind of influence do others leave on your children, your child or your children? And what kind of influence does your child leave on the others? You say, well, my child leave a good influence. You don't know if they do or not. When I was a school, what was I? School board member. Years ago, one of the fellows said that his child don't do anything wrong. And I said to him, I can't understand a person thinking child never do a thing wrong. Maybe we ought to go check this thing out. I said, we're going to go check it out. He didn't want to. I said, no, we're going to go check it out. We're going to find out the whole story right now because you brought the complaint up. So we went to this teacher. And I said, teacher, tell me what happened. Sounded totally different. Well, my kid don't do that. I said, I don't care if your kid does it or not. Apparently he did. Found out he did. So I told him, I said, you ought to learn a lesson now that your child is not perfect. And you get around the bad influence of your neighbor and so forth. Listen, folks, one of the worst places for your children to be is in a church. There's people sitting in these modern day churches that will destroy your child. They'll tell you sin is all right. After all, we're all saved. We're all going to heaven, whether we live right or not. And I'm saying to you folks that if you don't get that stuff out of a child, it goes like this. Well, you see, when I went to school, they taught us that we came from monkeys. And I concluded that they got it backward. We're going to monkeys. We're decaying. The human race is going backwards, not forward. You know what? You can be trained through education. Let's jump in seminar right now, because I'm going to get to that later, but you go to seminary. What you can learn in seminary is absolutely, totally different than this Bible. They can teach you how to twist this book all to pieces. Now, I'm holding on to this pretty heavy because some of you have to be retrained. Some of you are going to have a different thing. Are your children in public school taught what is right and wrong? Or are they taught that same-sex marriages is okay and it's permissible to do this and that and another thing? What did they believe about God and creation after they come out of that school? And what about this 7-day creation? I mean, really, what do they believe? Now I'm going to get a little more into this, page 19 on educating and school management. Now this could take you into a higher learning educational thing. You know, you really need to educate yourself daily. Let me start with that. You need daily to just learn, teach yourself, train yourself, develop to know things. I'm a person that really likes to learn something. I like to learn. I like to understand how things work and so forth. I want to know if I'm going to jump on a 747 airline and fly, I want to know how this thing works. What makes it turn? How does it do this? And how do you get it to go up? And how all this stuff. I'm not going to run one, but I still like to know how they work. And you'd say, on the wings, they have certain things out there on the wings. What are they for? Did you know it's a strange thing, but whoever developed that airplane had to manage that thing. He's got to manage how that plane is made because you're going to run into situations where you're going to need something different you had before. If there is no turbulence at all smooth drive, total smooth, you have a problem steering that thing. You have to have just a slight bit of turbulence to make that thing turn well. So they put little jiggers on there to make it just vibrate just a tiny bit. That's what they're made for, so that they run smooth. In case you get into that real gliding stuff, you know, that's what it's for. And you don't have to know that to fly an airplane, but the reason I want to know it is because I'm interested in knowing. I want to know about the stars up in the sky. How many's up there? You know, what's going on up above my head? and so forth. But how much education do you really need in the secular world that we live in? How much education is required? How much do you have to know? If you're going to get higher education, as they call it, you need to manage your life and make sure that that will not go to your head. Knowledge puffs up. It can puff up. Well, I know a lot. We need to learn on a daily basis, but we also need to learn how to handle education. Amen. Proper use of grammar. It's easy enough in this generation to say a lot of strange things anyway. But the original grammar law, I never learned. We didn't have grammar as such when I went to school. At least I don't know anything much about it. Where today they can pronounce words a lot different than we could back here. But what I want to know is why we can't at least say things half right. We would all know that if I was to say I don't got much education, you'd all know that's not right. But there are some things that I think that we need to be, especially if you're going to be a writer or something, you have to get that grammar pretty well correct. But you see, you can get sloppy in talking. A PhD come spend some days with me from way out in the West, and he said, I thought you was a PhD the way you write. Because I had a magazine article in one of the international magazines. I had a column in there. And he would read that column, and he said, you write like a PhD and talk like a hillbilly. So I had to learn to get rid of the hillbilly talk. But it's also such a thing as knowing you don't have to write great big words to make things, to show how big an educator you are. Just an old flow of understandable material. We get more response from articles and stuff by people saying, at least I can read this. And preaching the same way. I had a school teacher come to me one time after service and said, you wouldn't believe this, but I cannot understand most preachers, but I can understand you. And she said, I'm supposed to have the higher learning, and I can't understand it, but you make it so simple I can understand it. See, education can make you pretty dumb. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathens are dismayed at them. And I'm saying to you folks, you're going to learn the way of the heathen. If you go to school, they'll tell you, well, God didn't say that. God didn't mean this. God didn't mean that. God didn't mean this. God didn't mean that. And you can get in just a pretty serious problem. Yep. And further by these, my son, be admonished to making many books. There is no end, and much study is weariness to the flesh. There is a weariness to the flesh when you study a lot. You have to have some breaks. That's why we had recess at school. I'm pretty sure of that. See, most of your education is given by secular-minded people, even in a college, where there's supposed to be a seminary. A major teacher, this is direct from the press, a major teacher in a college of educated preachers, trained preachers. And he would tell the people, you know, what to believe. And one day, a man that I know the man, he asked this guy, he said, you believe this stuff? The fellow said, I don't even believe there's a God. This is my job. Well, he said, wouldn't that affect other people? He said, well, that's not my job. My job is to teach. I'm getting paid to do this. But they could tell by the way he said things, he didn't believe it. Now, another fellow that you know, and I don't know about giving his name. I'll just say it like this. You know him. No, maybe you don't. Some of y'all would. He went to a seminary. Esther, help me on this story a little bit. The first thing this man did when he got the class in together, now a brand new teaching group we're going to say, and he said, the first thing I want you to know is that this book is absolutely, how do you say that? A fantasy. He took this Bible and shot it down the hall. And this fella goes to study into seminary. College? Oh, okay, it was college. She said it was college. Well, have nothing to do with this book. He got up, gathered up his stuff, went home. Do you think that was the right thing to do? I want to ask you something. What do you believe about God? What do you really believe? What do you believe about the hereafter? Just really, what do you believe? Now let's talk about attention span management. A child has to learn to pay close attention to what you're saying. Sometimes you have to say, did you understand what I said? Repeat what I said. You know, I learned with adults you have to do that sometimes. They can't, there's something that's happened to this generation. But a child loses attention span. You have to manage that. If you have a child that's attention span is short-lived, you have to manage it. You have to decide what that child's attention span is. You pay attention to me. I'm giving instructions you need to hear. And there again comes back to the same thing in the church. You get finished preaching, some people don't have any idea what you said. They don't care. We used to have a girl who read a novel when she'd come to church. Sat back at the back and read a novel while we was having church. This is part of learning. A child will not learn that's not settled in on. I'm going to tell you something else about this. The Lord is saying the same thing in His church. People are not tuned in to what He's saying. Many people who don't have a good management of their attention span will also not listen to the voice of God. They can't hear Him. It's because they're so occupied with thinking this and thinking that. The carnal mind is really dominating a lot of people. But this is part of learning. We're going to learn today. This is how we're going to learn. We're going to do some things today. We're going to teach you something. I enjoy being around a teacher that knows what he's talking about. If he doesn't know what he's talking about, let's forget it. I asked the child to repeat what you said. What did you say? What did I just get done telling you? This is the way we do it. Start with secular things like mowing the lawn and so on. What did I tell you to do? Curiosity management. Your child has got curious questions. There's a time for children to learn certain things in life that they need to be taught decently, and they have to be taught with discretion. They have to be taught correctly. They have to know certain things. And you give them some kind of a weird answer that a crane bought the baby and all that kind of stuff is nonsense. That child can be taught decently and in order exactly what all this thing's about. That child needs to know sometime in life what's going to happen. How they're going to come to a place in life where their whole body takes a change. They come into adolescence. They start changing. Their body starts changing. Their whole being begins to develop into an area they're not used to. And they have to know what's taking place. But a little child just curious. They start asking questions and you give them some dumb answer. It's good to set that child down and just say, well, there's some things right now that you don't have to know, but I'm going to tell you this, and start working a way in. The Athenians never got over that curiosity thing because they said they were spending all their time with nothing else but to either tell or to hear some new thing. Well, to hear something strange. If you don't train your child right, somebody else is going to about this curiosity thing. They're going to train, and they're going to train them in the evil way. This sex education they have in schools is a pervert. Nothing righteous about that. Come on. Go and teach a child prematurely about all this stuff, and then they got problems with children before they're even old enough to even know what they're doing. Let's talk a little bit about this private person. I tell you, there's an auctioneer that I know. He's so private that he can't talk about any spiritual things at all. He said he's private, and yet he can go auction. That don't make sense to me. You're not an auctioneer and a private person. Now, that's two different things. What he needs to say is that I'm not interested in spiritual things. That's what he needs to say. Spiritual things are secondary to me and other. That thing of people saying I'm a private person. Don't ask me anything. You offend me. Don't ask me. I'm a private person. Why are you a private person? What do you mean you're a private person? Well, I don't want anybody to know. I don't want... to me, I can't understand. This is your business, not mine. But some people don't want you to know their age. Does that make you any younger? Are you going to live longer if they don't know how old you are? All kind of things. I think it all comes back to private person. Why are you a private person? Why are you a secret Christian? And why can't you speak for the Lord? Well, I'm a private person. I can't speak about spiritual things. No, you're carnal. That's pretty tough, isn't it? If you're a private person, well, I'm timid and I'm shy and I'm all this, you can get over that. You're supposed to be a proclaiming your relationship with Jesus Christ. If you got one right, you can't keep your mouth shut. I know a woman one time got saved. She's afraid she'd go tell her preacher she got saved, and she didn't want him to know it. She said he'd go be offended if he found out I got saved, because he said I'm saved because I joined church. I said, don't worry about it, because I knew exactly what she going to do. She go tell him she got saved. I knew. Once you can't keep that good news. You know that song said, I said I wouldn't tell a living soul. But then something happened, and he couldn't hide it. Such love that Jesus did impart. See, that the thing of it is, once you really get to the place where you get a hold of God, you'll lose that privacy. I'm a private person. Just don't bother me, because I'm really private. I'll tell you what, you get a hold of that carnality, you make a lot of difference. Get rid of carnality. Now, that critical spirit, your child can have a critical spirit. He can just be child. This is actually getting under the schooling thing yet. A child having a critical spirit, if you don't stop that child's going to get that thing and carry it on right on down through. I mean, that critical spirit. You just say, no, we're not having a critical spirit. It's such a thing as saying a negative statement without being critical. Just the other day, somebody said to me, as near as I can repeat, I'm going to try to give you the tone of voice and everything as near as I can. Well, I'm going to tell you one thing. He ain't making as much money as he claims he is. He says he's making a lot of money, but I'm here to tell you he's not making any money. I think he saw a look on my face. And he said, well, unless it changed. I didn't answer. I'm not saying a thing about that critical stuff. You go around and judge people and be critical of them. One day, people don't know why in the world that people talk about them. I know why they talk about you, because you talk about them. I grew up at the gossip table. We had preacher for lunch. Paul had a problem. They slanderously reported, and some affirmed that we say, let us do good that evil may come. Let us do evil that good may come. Thank you for correcting me. Let us do evil that good may come. Well, he said, I didn't say that. But you know what? You can get repeated for the dumbest stuff. Somebody left our church because they said, I said that rabbits don't go to heaven. And I said, would you please get the tape and show it to me? They never did. They couldn't find it. They said, well, I know you said it, but we can't find it. You know, the strange part of it is, folks, there's people tell all kinds of things about you. If you're in the ministry, you're a target for that kind of stuff. You said this, and you said that, and you said this, and you said that. No, I don't remember anything about it. In fact, I don't even believe that. Many of them said he had the devil, talking about Jesus. He got a devil. They're critical of him. That fellow's got a devil. That's who he is. He's not the Savior of the world. He got a devil. You know what? Jesus knew to handle everything. He had his life managed. He had a discipline about him. Paul said, we're fools for Christ's sake, but ye are wise. You know what? You're wise. I'm a fool. But he said, I don't care. The thing of it is, he said, even in this present hour, I'm both hunger and thirst, and are naked and are buffeted, and have no certain dwelling place. In labor, working with our own hands, being reviled, we bless. Being persecuted, we suffer. Being defamed, we entreat. We are made the filth of the world and the offscouring of all things unto this day. That don't sound like a very good deal, does it? But he said, I tell you what. He said, they speak evil of me all the time. The people he led to the Lord turns against him. This is one of the things you're going to find on normal procedure. You lead someone to the Lord and they'll turn against you oftentimes. They'll say you said this and you said that. And when people leave a church, they almost without exception try to get others to leave too. Because something has happened to their life and they know it. So they're going to try to invite you to go along with them. Jesus left an example which you follow in his footsteps. When he was reviled, he reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judges righteously. You know what? That makes a world of a difference. Let Jesus take care of your situation. You know, to me, I have heard so many dumb things that people said about me. I can't sit around and meditate on that junk. You throw it in the trash can, go off. Just really nasty. There's a fella called me up on the phone one time, and he called me on the phone, and he gave me the biggest chewing out. I mean, he called me everything you could name. He gave me a terrible reputation. He told me he had nothing to do with me, and he don't want to ever have a thing to do with me, and a boom, 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 and accused me of a lot of things. I'm not answering him. I will not respond to that trash. You know, the next week, he was in a casket. If I would have responded, then I'd have been responsible. I'm not responding. Let the Lord take care of that situation. A fellow wrote me a nasty letter one time, and I wrote back and said, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. You know, he said, Papa, you can put that letter. I said, I am going to put it in that letter. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not responding. I'll just say, I'll turn the vengeance over to the Lord. I'll tell you, some of those fellows, they didn't always I mean, Paul said, I've turned this fellow over to the devil. And John, that old loving disciple, said, when I come down there, I'll take care of that boy. And I mean, they're not going to fool with that stuff. I'm not arguing with you. You got an argument, don't come to me. I'm not interested in your stuff. Now, that deceitful spirit management. If your child or you starts deceit, you better find out where the seed of that deceit is. A deceitful person begets deceitful children. Crooked parents produce crooked children. A fella called me one day on the phone, and he started telling me about all the deceitful things his son's doing. While he's unloading, I said, Lord, open this man's understanding. All of a sudden he stopped. He said, you know, I know why my son's acting like this. I said, why? He said, because that's the way his daddy acts. He hung up. I never had to answer him. Don't blame your child for being deceitful. You're deceitful. You check it out. Now, I know a child could pick up deceit. Somebody has to get it from somewhere. But make sure it's not trailing from you anyway. And you have to, if that child starts some kind of a deceitful thing and kind of tricking you around, get a hold of that thing. And say, no, we're knocking that down. I'm managing that deal right now. We're not going to have that. We're not going to have that deceit. 5 times in the Bible it says, be not deceived. 3 times we have this warning, let no man deceive you. Let no man deceive you. See, if you are deceptive, you're going to get deceived. Without exception, you're going to get deceived. In these end times, when that great deception comes on the scene, if you're a deceptive person, you'll fall right in line with that deception. And once that is in you, it's almost impossible to get out of you. Just deceitful. Deceitfulness is often interwoven with truth. If we have a tendency to be deceitful, you better manage it before it manages you. You know what? A deceitful person will usually be religious with it. They'll say something like, well, now, wait a little. I need to talk to you about something, you know. Well, doesn't the Bible say this? And doesn't the Bible? No, what you're trying to do is cover up. People have come to me over the years when I preach, and they come to me and ask me a question, and I knew right away that sermon had them between the eyes. That's the reason you got questions. And it's often a tricky way of doing it. It's deceitfulness. Deceitful parents beget deceitful children. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. We're going to live in a world that's worse than this, where people are just deceitful. I mean, it's not anything, it's so deceitful out there now. Just the other day, with many other advertisements that say do this, they sent something in, you can buy this thing for less than $30. Think, you can buy this machine for less than $30, $29.99. You know, that's deceitful. Did you ever know that that's when America started becoming deceitful? She put on the gas price back years ago, 25 9/10. Why 9/10? Because you'll think it's cheaper. And the very first televisions that Sears Roebuck sent out, right after my school teacher told me they was going to have a box one day where they're going to watch things, and I told him, I said, man, you really are. He said, no. He said, they're going to have a thing you can sit in your house and watch a movie. And I thought the guy was way off. He said, they're already doing it. And then Sears Roebuck came out and advertised the first black and white television, $99.99. Now, you know what? You say, well, what's wrong with that? It's deception. You see, if you say you're selling gas for whatever now, I mean, you don't know from one day to the next what the price of gas is going to be. But they always got that tenth up there. That tenth stays there. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if you wouldn't lose money if you just put up there that we got so much for gas. If you just charge $2 for something instead of $1.99, you may lose customers. Because we're programmed that way. And some of us need to be reprogrammed in the area of spiritual things. We need to be reprogrammed so we have the right thinking of things. I'm not saying everybody's deceitful that does that, but I'm saying behind it was originally deceit. It's normal now to watch somebody say, for under so-and-so you can buy this, but it's always 99 cents. Deceitfulness is dangerous. If this is not a part, if this is not put to an end, major troubles can develop. If you got deceit in you in any form or shape, you better manage it now. You better get rid of it. You might as well repent of it and get rid of it. I can detect deceit right away, so don't even try me. I can walk in a business place and tell you if they're crooks or not. I can pretty well tell you. I met a man for the first time just recently, never seen a man before. The moment I shook hands with him, I said, here's a man that I can trust. I can trust this man. How did I know? Because truth responds to truth. I knew I could trust that guy. He proved to be trustworthy too. See what it is, folks, if you don't manage your life and you don't get this thing under management, you can follow that old world pattern of everything. The world just goes its way and you go yours. But I just want to tell you, let me just touch on the next one here, TV, video, book management. There's a lot of deception in that too, and it's a tricky way of getting you. Television, radio programs are motivated to get you and thinking a certain way. A talk show is a tricky thing because it's kind of catchy. But you will generally start thinking the way the talk show host tells you to think. And another thing, let me touch on this before we have to close for this session. You're watching a television and they always break stuff up with an ad. Well, flu season is coming. You better get this flu shot or this flu medicine or this cold is coming around. Old Mr. Cold is going to get on you and you better get this cough medicine. You better get this something else and better get this. And you know, the first thing you know, you start getting a headache. I heard a fellow tell me one time, he said, every time I watch one of those headache advertisements, get a headache. Sure enough. See, that's what it's made for. It's to try to get you to think you better get it. Because if you don't, you could really get yourself in trouble if you don't have my good stuff, you know. Are the television and video shows you're watching healthy for your spiritual life? Are they doing what they're intended to do? You know what? A fellow said these words. It was in print. If I make a movie without suggestive sexual things in it, I can't sell them.